Hey guys, this is a review of the Ultima, a very elusive full metal foam dart blaster with the largest plunger tube of 164cc in the Sabre blaster line. It is definitely a very good looking CNC full metal blaster, but how does it perform, and is it worth its hefty price tag of about 2,000 Singapore dollars? Before we move on, I would like to thank Alexander for lending me his new Ultima for review. We do not see the Ultima in the wild very often at all, and having this rare opportunity to review this blaster was like spotting a unicorn in the jungle. Are the stories about the Ultima really true? Is it really one of the highest hitting blasters around? Is it worth its price? Let's find out. Spoiler alert, I did encounter a couple of issues with the blaster during this review, and honestly, they had a huge impact on my impression of this blaster and Sabre in general. More on that later on. This brand new Ultima came with two recommended configurations: 70cm barrel and 26kg spring, and 90cm barrel with 30kg spring. It also came with a lighter 18kg spring. Of course, the Ultima also uses the Sabre 5° metal B-car with 30 bearings arranged in 5 rows of 6, which will be tested together with the blaster for the grouping test later on. The B-car attaches to the barrel via grub screws. The barrels insert and thread into the blaster with the attached aluminium barrel nuts, which are secured to the barrels with grub screws. The handguard has M-lock slots at both sides. The priming block slides along two linear rails, one at the top and one below. Hence, this blaster can be primed either with a pump grip or a side prime bar. A side prime bar will be much easier to prime compared to the pump action, as the side prime is in line with the spring force. The pump action is just not as efficient. This side prime bar featured here is the newest and bigger bar, which makes priming easier and more comfortable than the original smaller one. This side prime bar can be mounted on either side of the blaster, depending on whether you are left or right-handed. It has a Picatinny rail at the bottom for attaching a bipod, and a long row of two separate Picatinny rails that run along the top of the blaster. Do note that accessories cannot be mounted on this small middle part where the two rails join. It is advisable to wear face protection, as your face will be resting directly on the Picatinny rail and rubbing against it when taking aim through the red dot sight or scope. The mag well has the Sabre logo on it. It is compatible with standard worker talent magazines. It is a tight fit, so it takes some time to get used to inserting and pulling out the magazine. The mag release lever is big and comfortable. However, the magazine has to be pulled out and does not gravity drop. The cutout windows at both sides allow the user to see and clear any jams. Darts can also be loaded directly into the breech and fired one at a time, if you like this style of reloading for some strange reason. The trigger is big and comfortable. The trigger pull on the 18kg spring is quite smooth and light compared to the Iron Pangolin with equivalent FPS numbers. There is no wall or hair trigger though, and the trigger is pressed in with even pressure until it fires off. However, I know some players are quite turned off by a lack of a trigger guard. This does not trigger me that much, and I think it looks and feels fine without a guard. The Ultima is compatible with both AR and AEG grips. There are the Sabre and Ultima words at both sides of the blaster. The back portion of the blaster is supposedly buffer tube compatible, but I did not try swapping it with my own buttstock. If you have shorter arms like mine, replacing the default compact buttstock will make the blaster longer and the side prime bar much harder to reach and prime. I will elaborate more on this later. It is a little bit tricky to swap springs at first. The caster nut will need to be loosened slightly for the threaded connector to be turned out. Once the connector with the spring guide is out, the spring can be taken out. Putting the spring guide back in is also a little bit tricky, as he has to be threaded in the right amount and not too far in for the blaster to catch when priming. The connector also needs some trial and error to thread in properly and stay secure with the castle nut so that the buttstock stays in place and does not swing around. I feel a new user will definitely need a little bit more time to get used to spring swapping this blaster. The newer Apex Prime blaster from Sabre definitely improved and simplified the spring swapping process, as the spring guide threads in and out nicely without having to play around with a castle nut. Also, the default buttstock is not as comfortable as a padded one. The air seal is good. The side prime is also surprisingly light with the 18kg spring. Spoiler alert, it clocks in at an average of 350 FPS with the 18kg spring, and it is probably the lightest 350 FPS prime I've ever experienced. This is definitely one of the best things about this Ultima. Comparatively, I needed two hands to prime the Iron Pangolin to achieve a similar average 350 FPS. However, as mentioned earlier, the The side prime bar is located quite far in front of the blaster, hence I have to stretch my hand further to reach and pull the side bar, which makes priming somewhat uncomfortable after a while. I feel that players with longer hands will probably not have this issue. Here is a side-by-side comparison with the Kunlun. The Ultima is slightly longer and measures about 120 cm with the 70 cm barrel and pica. The Ultima is quite heavy, weighing about 2.9 kg. The Chronograph test will be done with the 18 kg and 26 kg springs, and with 70 cm and 90 cm barrel. We will not be testing the 30 kg spring. Remember the two issues I mentioned earlier? The first issue is that the 30 kg spring is unusable and impractical for most players. I tried to prime it many times off screen, and it was a ridiculous hard prime even with both hands on the side priming bar and properly bracing the blaster on my hips. The blaster also did not catch after numerous attempts. According to Sabre, a double side priming bar is needed to prime the 30 kg spring. Hence, Alexander has bought this double side priming bar along with a bunch of titanium upgrade parts, so maybe we will see the 30 kg spring being primed successfully in the future video. However, my opinion remains the same as what I mentioned in my earlier 350 FPS Iron Pangolin video's description. If you need two hands to prime a blaster, you probably shouldn't do it. The second issue will be elaborated after the chronograph test. As mentioned in my previous videos, for my American viewers out there, please add about 20 to 30 FPS to the numbers. We experience constant and extreme high humidity throughout the year in Singapore, so our FPS numbers tend to be about 20 to 30 lower than other countries located away from the equator. As you can see from the chronograph results, with the 70 cm barrel, the average FPS for the 18 kg spring is 346.3, which is higher than 336.7 for the 26 kg spring. The 18 kg spring is also way easier to prime. This made me question the existence of the 26 kg spring. Was there any testing done with the blaster prior to selling this spring? If the 26 kg spring is harder to prime and performance is not as good as the 18 kg spring, will the 30 kg spring be any different? Tuning a blaster is not as simple as throwing a spring in based on kilograms alone and expecting it to work better. Overall, the 18 kg spring with 70 cm barrel seems the most promising, so I did another test with the same configuration and with 1.3 gram Sabre TDARTS instead. And here are the results of the two different dart types side by side. Let's move on to the grouping test. The grouping test is conducted outdoors with light to moderate winds and high humidity. I am aiming at this figure 11's target head at 30 meters away. Brand new 1.3 gram TDARTS are used for the test. My LPVO is roughly 0 to hit the 30 meters target. Testing with 18 kg spring, 70 cm barrel and Sabre B car. Here is the grouping test result. The grouping is fairly decent, with some of the shots drifting to the right towards the end due to a moderate shift in wind intensity. In general, the Ultima is long and heavy, and is not suitable for competitive gameplay. For slower paced, long-range sniping, it is a viable option, but I feel Sabre needs to do more to improve its performance and accuracy. To set the context right, I have nothing against Sabre. In fact, I love the Sabre Harrier's metal plunger and catch plate upgrades. The Sabre 1.3 gram TDARTS are also the best and most accurate darts I have ever bought and used. The Sabre Max Thieves are also very useful, affordable, and definitely worth the money. However, my honest opinion is that Sabre needs to put in the work, experiment with the appropriate and effective springs to work with the Ultima, do chronograph tests and maybe even grouping tests, and then publish the findings before putting their products out for sale. It is not good enough to just spec the springs based on kilograms and then sell them with the expectation of increased performance. Also, for example, if I am buying an X-Shot Pro Series Fury X for $20, I would expect to put some work into it to fine-tune it, push its FPS a little bit further, improve its accuracy with a better B car, and maybe put in a pump kit. It is a cheap blaster after all. But if I were to spend about 2,000 Singapore dollars on one of the most premium and most expensive foam dart blasters available, I would have much higher expectations. I would expect the blaster to be optimized and almost perfect out of the box, with proper testing already done on the performance with various combinations of barrels and springs that actually work. The Ultima does have its strengths. Its full metal build is sturdy like a tank, and it is easy to prime the 18 kg spring to hit 350 FPS. But I kind of expected more than that from the most premium blaster from Sabre. Ultimately, at its current state, I can safely say the Ultima is not worth it. You will be better off getting the Apex Prime instead, with similar performance and proven results from more users, for only 1/3 of the cost of the Ultima. Anyway, the last update I got from Alexander before posting this video review is that Sabre has taken his Ultima blaster back to fix and fine-tune it. Let's hope they do their best to realize the blaster's true potential. What do you think of this Ultima? Leave your comments, like this video and subscribe to the channel if you found this useful. Thank you and see you.